Over the last 20 years, fertility rates in America have been on the decline. And while the population grows primarily driven by immigration, more and more people are choosing not to have children. We talk about it and what it means for the black community in particular. Next up on Mama We Made It with DJ and Reg. What up, man? What up? What up? What up?
What's going on,
Good
good
morning
brother?
to you. What's happening?
All is well. How about you?
I got no complaints. It's a pretty mellow day over here. Going through the transitions of, you know, seasons in my life, both literally outside, but also kind of in my own head. I the other day. Actually, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Mama We Made It with DJ and Reg. That's DJ. I'm Reg. I was about to go on a rant, so I figured I would do the intro first before I get there. And not even a rant. The other day, I'm separately talked to both of my sons, like one here and one while I was traveling. And they, independent of each other, both said that they were looking forward to becoming fathers. And I was like, I'm in no hurry for that. They're like, no, not now. Like, not, not at, 21 or whatever, but I'm looking forward to the day where I will be a father. And they both said, and that is in no small measure to, our father and we wanting to continue in that
Hmm.
vein. And so it was a compliment and I took it as such and I was moved. But it got me thinking, and then I saw an article and I shared it with you, and we were talking about sharing you and the king. We were talking about it. Fertility rates in the US continue to decline, approaching historic lows. And for definition, fertility rate is number of births to childbearing age women
Yep.
measured over time, right? Without getting deep into the weeds of the numbers, and they measure it on a per thousand women basis. So right now, it's somewhere around 1.6 in the U.S. through 2024, and that's down from as high as 3.7 during the 60s and the end of the baby boom era. And within that, a lot of the decline is being seen amongst black and brown women, but particularly black women. There's always been a fertility gap. Black women, Hispanic women have had more babies per thousand than white women. That gap is closing, and there's always been a gap between the U.S. and other developed countries, and that gap is closing as well. And we're starting to look much like Western Europe in our numbers. And it just got me to thinking about what does it mean that people are having fewer children? Our people are having fewer children at an accelerated rate. And when I hear my sons talking about building families, when families are starting to get smaller, what it all meant. So I'm fascinated by what it means. So I wanted to open that conversation up and get into it. So I'm curious, what's your take, man? What's your perspective in this space?
It's an issue, is my perspective. I think for me, when we started talking a little bit about it the other day, Purse, it was, fundamentally, we know from a governmental perspective, it becomes about replacement rates, right? That's the formula.
Yep.
And it feels to me as if, again, this might be the social scientist in me, I don't know, man, that there has been historically and consistently a desire to mitigate the black population's role in replacement rates. We look at current administration and some of the activities and behaviors there. It supports my theory. So if you can mitigate black folks' role in replacement rates and prioritize, I'll call it non-black folks' role, that's a hell of a mission you're on. And when I look at healthcare, I look at, socioeconomic, social political, prison system,
Childcare.
childcare, it feels like this is becoming more strategic than happenstance. So that's where I get concerned. Now, free choice and free will, are still critically important. I made a decision to not have kids, right? And I think that should stand. I don't. I just made a decision. I wasn't going to have kids. What I will tell you though, Purse, is if I had kids, I'm sure I'd love them dearly, without a doubt. But I don't long for them.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm also happy to be here. So I'm glad my mom thought enough.
We all are, brother. We
Yeah,
all
all
are.
right, well, good, man. Likewise. So my thing is, I look at this from a strategic social science perspective, and man, I think it's done in a deliberate way,
Okay.
and I see it as part of a strategic endeavor by a lot of folks who are in power, a subset of certain communities who have a lot of power. Now, how about you? Is there anything in particular?
I appreciate the fact that you jumped straight into the deep water of these motherfuckers are trying to kill us.
That, come on, brother. Yeah.
And we'll edit that out, Marina, to something more palatable. These cats is really trying to kill us and shrink our numbers. Um, all that you just said, right? We started this show 4 or 5 months ago now, and one of the early episodes we did was talking about population
Yep.
trends and the like. And so this to me is a continuation of the conversation around population trends, demographic shifts. And a lot of what's happening is that yes, fertility rates are shrinking, population is still growing, driven principally, but not solely, by immigration.
Yeah.
And when I think about that, I think you're 100% right, which is shaping the demographics of immigrants who are acceptable coming into the country is actively a strategy, has been for a very long time. Shaping birth rates is a strategy and has been for a long time.
Yep.
And, quite frankly, shaping mortality rates has been an active strategy. We can look no further than going back to COVID and how that was devastating to our communities. And now we're in a world where nobody wants to get the vaccine. And we know that's going to have a knock on effect to our communities. I do believe all of it is scripted, right? Like all of it is connected in that way. I also think what you said, which is there's free will and there's choice in here. And so some of this is a reaction to the world is crazy. It's expensive to have children. I don't know if I want to bring them into this world. I'm not really confident in the medical establishment to take care of me and my baby. A lot of that is in there, as well as, women making the choice independent of everything else around what I want to do with my body. And I'm for all of that. And I'm trying to weigh the two. On the one hand, yes, they're actively controlling our numbers. And we've talked before around it's so curious that we seem to be locked at about 14% of the population, never getting
Hmm.
too much higher, never
Hmm.
getting too much lower, but never really growing. And that's a weird thing before you even get into whether or not we're undercounted in the census. So I think all that works together. What I'm really fascinated around here in this story is how much the dream of parenthood, how much the dream of community building, how much our lineage, like we talk a lot about we gonna be here forever and ever and ever and ever. We've been here since the beginning, we'll be here to the end of time. That I believe fully. In this particular country, our numbers are under pressure.
Yep.
Conversely, the continent of Africa growing by leaps and bounds in different ways. So there's a broader diasporic conversation. But I am curious, maybe concerned about where these trends are going. They're not so much out of step with white fertility rates going down as well. It's just the precipitous decline relative to them
Correct.
that catches my attention. So I'm a conspiracy dude only because I know that what other people call conspiracy, I call facts. Like,
Yeah.
you read it, you can see the picture. But I'm trying not to be conspiracy dude here, but I do wonder what it means at the personal choice level around, as you described, making the choice to not have kids and what that means going forward for the growth and health of the community.
Yeah, and I think that's I'm where you are. So again, a lot of this conversation is based on an article that you shared with me, and I love it when you do that. Um, just some quick stats, person, I think will serve as an underpinning for this. 37% of Black respondents to Kennedy School survey, Institute of Politics. 37% of Black respondents said having kids was important. 51% of white and 46% of Hispanic. My question is, why is it important or not important? And we've heard about, again, in certain pockets, the importance of certain communities, sub-communities of the white race. They think it's very important to be having kids now. Very important to be having kids now. They are also not alarmed by these numbers in the Black community. So what that would tell me, again, if I'm coming up with a theory for some form of paper, that there could be an agenda. And that's where I get concerned. A lot of these Hispanic folks, man, who still have the option to claim Anglo, white, may not feel compelled to target themselves or consider themselves as Hispanic. So now those numbers start to shift. So when we talk about surveys and things that we have to complete a racial demographic for, there is an option oftentimes for Hispanic folks to opt out. We don't have that option. So these numbers could actually be even a little worse than, I say worse than what we see.
Sure.
So where I get concerned is I do a lot of teaching. I've taught in universities. I see less and less of us prioritizing college and prioritizing formal education. And I get some of that. When the numbers shrink, I get very alarmed. And this is not about any particular race being nefarious on the whole, but it is about these subsets who control really critical aspects of our existence.
Sure.
So
And a lot of
that's where I get concerned.
yeah, no, and a lot of policy is designed focused on the family,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can watch and you can hear messaging around prioritizing married couples over not married couples,
Yes.
and we get married at lower rates than the general population. You can see policy targeting children of married couples in a way that they do not
Mm-hmm.
prioritize children of non-married parents. And so the list of policy implications is significant, not to mention the fact that the census data and how they collected and manipulated is up for broad discussion here as well. So a lot of it happens there. I wonder, you talk a lot about flourishing,
Mm-hmm.
right? You talk a lot about freedom. We talk a lot about joy. Again, thinking about my sons and thinking about, I'm a baby of five, right?
Mm-hmm.
My mother was one of 10. My father was one of seven or seven or eight. There's some halves in there somewhere. I get it wrong, but big families, right? I got a
Yep.
lot of cousins, but I got two kids,
Yep.
right? None of my siblings has more than two kids.
Mm-hmm.
And as I look around, you can just feel family size is getting smaller. And I don't know what that means for the family reunion. I don't know what that means for the cookout. I don't know. And then when I marry that with the dispersion of the community, it feels like a decline in fertility rates, a softening of growth rates outside of immigration. It starts to erode the fabric of communities, or puts pressure on it at least. And I wonder what the long term implications are going to be, less for what the man is doing to us, but how do we intra community navigate a lot of these changes. And that's before you get to the other component here is the increasing, the continued rise in interracial couples,
Yep.
and over time, the likelihood that the children of those couples will find their ways, ultimately leading whiter and whiter lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of
Mm-hmm.
white presenting, their choices in terms of how they acculturate are different,
Mm-hmm.
but they're gonna get lighter, and they're gonna at some point in time look a certain way. I saw a picture of Quincy Jones's family the other day, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that's a fascinating, colors, United Colors of Benetton picture, and that's not a critique, but I just wonder how it all comes together when we start thinking about what a contiguous, coherent community looks like. I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I think there are two things that come to mind when you speak of that. One is we all know that white skin does not mean I'm on a side of nefarious intentions. But
At
what we
all.
what
Yep.
we do know is there's pressure there. There's pressure there. And can you withstand the pressure? And I think that's a legitimate question. Back to your first point though, Purse. I would imagine if it's not your wife, it's your children who are going to be caring for Reg. God forbid something happen in life and you just need some assistance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When we aren't having kids, that's an issue. Along with socioeconomic pressures, etc. What's going to happen? Quick story. Buddy of mine in Vegas, black educator. She's in her 60s. She taught his kids. She lost her job. She is now living in the home of that family and I hate to say this, man, sleeping in a closet. Now, that's a good sized closet, but that's where she is in life. And it's funny we talk about this, man, but that's a real reality that was discussed with me yesterday. Now, is it an anomaly? Potentially. Is it more likely given these numbers? Absolutely. So fortunately,
Elder
she has,
care is a real thing.
yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. If anything ever happened to my mom, I got her.
Yeah.
And, there's some comfort in that. But with these numbers, man, and if I'm not trying to have kids and I don't trust the healthcare system, where do I go and what do I do?
So elder care is a real thing. Senior citizens homes are some of the most segregated
Oh my God, man.
communities in the country.
Oh my God.
And the stories of mistreatment in general and mistreatment of elder black folks are rampant. You can find them, you can Google them. It happens often, and oftentimes that was the low cost option because
Yep.
people couldn't afford to take care of their loved ones on their own. I'm telling my kids right now, you put me in a home, I'm gonna come back and haunt y'all like you've never been haunted
I
before.
won't let that happen. I want
I appreciate you.
you be
Yeah, let
down
me
here in
move in your
Scottsdale
closet. I know
before
you
that
got big
happens,
closets. I'll come over there.
brother.
But here's the thing. So that we always try to find the road to freedom here. Are you familiar with the term Palenque?
Not that I know of.
Palenque.
Okay.
Without getting into detail, it is a variety of definitions. One could be kind of a walled community that you build,
Hmm.
but it really represents for me the notion of the place that enslaved Africans who fought for and secured their freedom ran to and built
Got
off
it.
the grid, right? So you
Got it.
think about the Maroons in Jamaica, you think about various Palenque communities in Colombia and other parts where there are a lot of enslaved Africans. And it is this notion of a secure homestead space that we control, that we create our own sense of culture and freedom away from the prying eyes of those who seek to do us harm. I think about it a lot as I get older because, as you mentioned before, I think about compound living. Like, I think about generational living. I got an uncle who lives basically in a family compound. It's my uncle and my aunt. my two adult cousins, their various families, and there are different, wings of their
Oh
home that
yeah.
allow them to share a village community vibe and all the intergenerational benefits that come from that, while also, defraying costs and creating sustainability go forward. So I think a lot about, as I get older, that model of intergenerational connection, so that even if fertility rates are declining and population of generation behind us is declining, the connectedness of us living together is a real solution. Like, it's a
Hmm.
real solution to be considered in terms of how do we secure a corner of land where two or three generations can live together and build. And we see that model play out in a lot of immigrant communities. With the older I get, the more I'm like, yo, we've
Yes.
got to figure out that model, because I think there's some power there to make sure that the storytelling stays alive, the passing down of knowledge stays alive, but also that economically we can build strength in numbers and in community.
It is, Purse. And again, your kids are adult age now, but imagine now, just kind of go back in time. If you had young kids or I had young kids, I really want to be clear with who my kids are around. What other kids are they around? And when you talk about that sense of community, I would want to know they can go next door just like I could when I was growing up, and trust the experience that they have. I think that's
Hmm.
critical too when you talk about this sense of community.
Hmm.
It's just the trust that comes with that.
I definitely think that that is a benefit. The communal nature of raising our kids, like remembering what it was like growing up for us, and how many aunts and uncles and cousins were
Hmm.
nearby, family friends were nearby. You know, it's a different world now. The community is a little bit more spread out. We don't necessarily live near our families, no job and career opportunities being what they are. And so I do think the model does help reestablish some of that, as well as balance, whatever may be happening in the school demographic, so that they come home to an environment that is reinforcing beyond just what, mom or dad have to say, but there are other voices helping them understand themselves in a world that doesn't really care too much about them.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we also know, Perch, there are fertility challenges, right? What are the numbers? 11% of women in the U.S. have fertility, 9% of men. But I think the fact about this to me is we can no longer simply write off the infertility rates in Black women to healthcare and financial woes and economic issues, right? We are seeing a political force, in my opinion, impact the desire to even bring children into this world, and I think
Hmm.
that's pitiful.
Hmm.
But we all know when you operate, the goal is to get us to operate in self-preservation, the opposite of flourishing, and bring it back to that. That's the goal. And when you are in that state, the last thing you're worried about is bringing someone else into that state that's connected to you, right? You're trying to find a way out, trying to protect yourself, trying to survive. And when we're in survival mode, the last thing we're trying to do, man, is think about, yeah, it'd be nice to have 4 kids. So it's again, man, I call me jaded. Um, I believe in design, system design, and I'm seeing this one play out. We think about the number of young brothers, older brothers in prison. You can take them out of the pool. There's a lot going on, bro, and
What do
it's
we do?
very disheartening.
Like Dr. Flourishing, you know, that line one, I'm making a back call. Like, how do we, so as not to end this episode on, a
Wah, wah,
downbeat.
wah,
Yeah,
wah.
right. Wowsy, wowsy, woo woo. Like, what is the liberating strategy here as a go forward?
I think you called a big part of it, Purse, is we have to create flourishing communities. And it's not just about individual flourishing. I think these conversations are critical. I think the networks that we establish has to be more meaningful and purposeful. We have to be discussing these issues. We have to realize that these are also political issues that affect us in many ways. So our votes matter, all that, man. I think there's so many things that we can focus on. I think ensuring that we have a healthy self-identity. We're learning every single day, and just remain self-aware. So those are some of the things, man. Anything you think I missed? What are you thinking?
No, I think those are all the right things. I do believe that the convening and conversing of community along the dimensions of economic development, spiritual development, intellectual development, functional capability, getting our hands in the dirt and reclaiming some sense of our connection to the land, continuing to invest in all the ways that we get food and sustain ourselves.
Yeah.
I do think that what we're looking at is a version of recommitting to homesteading,
Yep.
and maybe not literally, but all the ways that we got to put our hands in it and learn how to fix it, solve it, tinker with it, as opposed to leaning into a service mindset, which is I can call somebody to do this for me. I think it's going to be really, really important going forward. As it relates to where we started, which is the fertility rates, I think time will tell whether or not this trend continues from a choice standpoint, because I do think that there is a lot of confidence and joy in what it means to be black
Yeah.
in this land, right? Like for all the down headlines and all the ways that it feels like we're under attack, it's beautiful to be black. It will always be so.
Hmm.
And I am confident that our people who've been here from the beginning will be here to the end, will find their ways to flourishing with meaning, with purpose, with legacy, and with, generations to follow. And we will not give up having babies to pass on all this beauty going forward. So that I'm confident. What the numbers will look like over time, that I don't know.
I'll tell a short story, and then you can lock it up if you want. I remember there were about 4 blocks of my neighborhood growing up, primarily high school, and all black folks. One white family lived across the street from me. There was a group of white folks, man, who would drop skunks off in our neighborhood, a truckload of skunks. And oftentimes they would drop them off near people's garages, etc. So you scared to death right? They do it at night. What we said was we need to have somebody who on these streets, man, somebody stays up. And we figured out who it was. And it was handled. What we're speaking to, and again, that is a very dumbed down version of a sense of community and protecting each other. But who would ferret out the skunks, man? I don't have that where I live. How do we recreate that? And when I hear you talk about that, I go back to childhood, and that was just one example. Outside of everybody always had a ride to school, a ride home from school, everybody ate good, all that, right? And I think it's important, man. I think it's extremely important. And this feeling of isolation at times, man, can be really depressing.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to figure out how to remain connected, to your point, and be deliberate around community first.
That's DJ. I'm Reg. This is Mama We Made It with DJ and Reg. This is probably one of our heavier conversations. We don't mean to bring the people down, but we do think it's important that you're aware of what's happening around us, with us, and we are continuing to commit to this space of uplift, of sharing what we know and what we've seen so that we can all get free. We hope you have a great day. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, like us, rate us, review us. Check us out on any podcast platform you use to get your favorite podcasts. We do this once a week on Wednesdays. We'll see you next week. Peace.
See you soon.